understand what a head and shoulders pattern is, you can hit this I button, and what that will do is bring up a box that tells you exactly what the characteristics are of this head and shoulders pattern. And in this case, it's identified as 3 successive peaks. Middle is the highest, and the 2 outside lower and relatively equal in height. You also talk about when it forms during an uptrend and often signals an upcoming trend reversal, as I mentioned earlier or in the beginning of the webinar. So those are the critical steps that you want to go through with AutoChartist and setting up that filter. And after you do that, you want to start to search for your patterns. So what we'll do at this time is we'll go through a real example with the live markets, and we'll take a look at what we just accomplished here. We have here is I've selected the head and shoulders FX majors, all intraday patterns. If I go to my edit function, you'll see that here's where I've selected the patterns. Here's where I've named my patterns. And inside my search, I've selected bear market, as I said before. And I've gone through here and selected my quality indicators. And here's where I've selected head and shoulders pattern, right there at that particular point. So after we save that and we go through the search, you'll see that first pattern that's identified is a completed pattern of the dollar, US dollar, Canadian dollar. And in this pattern on the 15-minute chart, you see that head and shoulders identified here. We see the pattern ending time, and we see the length of the pattern as well as the direction, and we see that it's considered a reversal pattern. Now it's considered a reversal pattern because when this initial trend was being formed right here, it was in an up pattern. And when it finally broke out to the downside, it was in a down pattern. So that's a reversal of the initial trend. The quality of this particular pattern, which is the average of the initial trend, uniformity, clarity, and breakout, is 7 bars, and that's a pretty solid rating. Okay, our initial trend at the onset of the pattern was 4, and our uniformity was an average 5. Now the uniformity, in case you're wondering what that represents, you can click on this I button and see that it's even spacing of the turning points that touch support and resistance lines. So just for, if you look at this particular head and shoulders pattern, you'll see that it looks visually appealing. It looks like a head and shoulders pattern should appear. You have your shoulder, your head, and then your shoulder here, and then finally the break to the downside. This part of the pattern is called the neckline, and that's what triggers the breakout to the downside. So right here, this line here represents the 2 shoulders, and that's resistance. And then finally you have the neckline drawn, and that's the trigger point for the breakout to the downside, and that's where it becomes a completed pattern. Now as it begins to break out to the downside, you'll also get a breakout rating. In this case, we have a 10 bar, or the maximum breakout rating. That indicates that there was strong momentum and volatility during the formation of that breakout. And that's a pretty good sign that that market's going to continue down into the target zone, that this gray box that's been identified by AutoChartist. In addition to visually seeing this box, you'll also have a forecast from and a forecast to zone right here where you see the numbers. So again, the thing you want to look at with this particular pattern, you'll see that it's visually appealing. You can clearly see that there's a thrust being made to this final top. As I said before, that's the rush of the final buyers stepping in, trying to catch that last leg up in the marketplace. Here's where you get your break and then you get another attempt to break out to the upside. Those are traders that may have missed this particular move and are now trying to catch up. But as I said before, this move is being done on high volume. When this move is taking place, it's relatively low volume, and without that extra volume in the marketplace, that surge begins to fail and shorts begin to enter, and some of the weaker longs begin to bail out as the trend begins to turn down. Okay, now when we look at this particular pattern, this is the Japanese yen, US dollar Japanese yen. You can also see that it looks like the classic head and shoulders pattern. You have a situation where you have your shoulders formed, and then you see that strong peak, which is the head, a breakdown and a final failure here, and then finally the market gaps lower through the support line. And this was a close target, but the momentum was able to continue and be able to be strong enough to take this particular currency pair even further down. That's where your trading skills come in. You can always set a target area as suggested by AutoChartist, but as you become more skilled as a trader, you'll be looking to trail stops to take advantage of a change in trend. The profit targets for a head and shoulders pattern tend to be related to two things. Some people measure the distance between the head and the shoulder and then subtract that distance from the breakout point, and they make that their target zone. So if you have a narrow distance between the shoulder and the head, then your measured target zone tends to be smaller. Okay, if you have a large distance, then you tend to get a bigger target. At the same time, since it does represent a reversal in the trend, you may want to become a trend trader at that point and begin to trail your stops. And we'll be getting to those later in the webinar, where we'll talk about stop placement. But so you always have that option once you get that momentum in your favor to rather set it up as a target price, and or also to let the move continue until it reaches a final bottom. Now, the beauty part about the head and shoulders pattern is that you can use it in any time period. It could be anywhere from 15-minute to 1440-minute pattern. So you can see that for this Japanese yen, it's set up for a 15-minute pattern, but we also have one set up here on a 30-minute pattern. You can see that this is basically, of course, it's going to be the same pattern, but it's stronger candlesticks and shorter time frame. Should be, like I said here, it should be exactly half, since the time periods are half. So one took 46 bars to develop, and the 30-minute took 23 bars to develop. You can see this a little bit clearer. If I click this on and we blow up the chart, you'll see that what I was talking about is you have your thrust up for the head, you have your final failure, and then a breakout, maybe a slight hesitation before finally gapping down and continuing on its way down. But again, you want to focus on this area, and you want to make sure that you can easily identify what's taking place in the market. There's times when market volatility and market conditions dictate a unusual or seems to be like a disjointed chart pattern. Oftentimes that's the function of the volatility, and we've been under some volatile conditions this week. So to have a market pattern as clear as this one developed this week is really remarkable, considering all the swings that we've had in the marketplace. Okay, let's move on to another market. This is the Euro US dollar. This is another pattern. This is a head and shoulders pattern, but you can see that this is that type of volatility I was talking about. May not be as clear as the Japanese yen, US dollar Japanese yen pattern, but nonetheless you still see the distinctive shoulder and then head and then final shoulder and the breakdown. So the thing that you do when you work these filters is you play with different setups. You can search for different quality, clarity, or uniformity, and you can start to see patterns develop in your searches. That a pattern that has a high uniformity or a high clarity as well as high breakout may give you the type of pattern that you visualize as being the head and shoulders pattern that you want to trade. So those are some of the personal preferences that you have to look at when you work with the filters. Okay, it's easy to set every indicator at 0 and let AutoChartist find head and shoulders patterns, but over time you'll begin to see the type of head and shoulders pattern that you feel, or again, your personal preference and your own experience finds more attractive. And that's usually a good thing, that you want to have some kind of feel for a particular pattern. And some traders say that trading is 10% art, so that may be the 10%, your ability to distinguish the type of head and shoulders pattern that you feel is better than another head and shoulders pattern. And these indicators here will help you hone in on those particular patterns that are attractive to you or fit the criteria that you're looking for. Now we're going to take a